we're disappointed at the outcome. You know, especially taking into consideration the kind of submissions that were made and the interaction with the judge himself. But more so in the sense that, you know, the judge here had an opportunity to, in effect, ensure that these sittings that are going to happen from the 7th and those judges, in effect, are not tainted off the back of a process that is, in effect, quite honestly, quite unconstitutional. So that's our biggest issue. And instead, it takes this hot potato and sends it back to his colleagues in the Western Cape High Court to say, well, you created this mess, you sorted out. A nominee, in this case, Dr. Hlophe, that was nominated by us to participate in the JSC sitting. And there was a vote, and he was nominated to sit there. That was the political process. That is a process that was democratic within the National Assembly. Now, you know, you find the DA using the courts, you know, for its side shows to deal with political scores. And that's what's happening. And that's why we've been calling to say we need to change this system. We are the lawmakers as parliamentarians. We make the law. The judge's responsibility are to ensure that the law is implemented according to the framework of the law that we set.
Our legal analyst Kevin Smith says Hlophe's court woes are far from over.
The MK had said that with Dr. Hlophe's absence, it would be improperly construed. But the court rightfully pointed out that it being construed in a certain way is not necessarily the fault of the JSC, because the JSC asking for his absence is not the JSC acting in its own instance, but it's in fact following court orders. And those court orders are valid until they have either been overturned or the final decision has been made. So I think the court has actually applied itself very quickly to such a matter on such urgency. And I think the JSC, as it should proceed next week. And if anything, the final hearing of these matters should then give finality as to whether Dr. John Hlophe is rightfully someone who should be part of the JSC. And if not, how does that replacement actually take place?
Smith also says the MK party's court bid serves as a litmus test on the JSC's judicial independence.
Given the fact that we're in, so to speak, uncharted waters in the JSC having been construed with a former impeached judge, this is something that we have to have decided in our courts. And the reason is that because it hasn't come up in the past doesn't mean that it may not come up in the future. So a case of this nature is actually important for the JSC's functioning in the future itself, not just in its current instance. And because, like I said, we have never been in a situation where our courts or where our constitutional dispensation has to deal with a former impeached judge actually sitting as part of the JSC, it would have become a problem in the future in any event. So I think outside of it being in the realm of politics, it was important for the JSC as a whole, and it was important for the confidence in the public in the JSC itself.
Now, from tomorrow, the JSC will begin a 2-week process of looking to fill 21 different vacant judges' posts. Over 50 candidates will be interviewed, with the sitting key to the future and stability of the country's courts. Nic Andersen filed this report.
The MK party has been adamant that any court decision keeping John Hlophe out of JSC proceedings will mean that the body will be operating while improperly constituted.
We say in relation to the right that the second applicant has a clear, not just a prima facie right, a clear right to participate in the JSC as a duly designated member of the National Assembly. And that the full court, in interdicting his participation in the imminent proceedings beginning on the 7th of October, simply does not detract from that designation to the JSC.
However, the South Gauteng High Court wasn't convinced by these arguments. On Saturday, it dismissed the MKP's application to block this week's interviews from going ahead. And while the MK Hlophe legal battles have overshadowed the scale of these JSC proceedings, the interviews scheduled for the next 2 weeks are absolutely key for the South African courts across the country. 54 candidates will be interviewed for 21 vacancies across the judiciary, with the interview set to take place over 2 weeks. It will mark Chief Justice Mandisa Maya's first time chairing proceedings while in the top job. Aside from the sheer volume of vacancies needing to be filled, the key posts available include several leadership positions, crucial for the operation of the courts. One of the biggest, but JSC needs to find a permanent replacement for Hlophe, who was impeached from the role of Western Cape High Court Judge President. He will now have no say in choosing his successor. Other notable vacancies include the positions of Deputy Judge President in KZN, as well as Judge President of the Labour Court. Both the KZN and Gauteng High Courts are also in desperate need of more judges. 6 vacancies on both courts will look to be filled this week. With the JSC meeting and interviews now set to proceed from tomorrow, some concerns over what the vacancies remaining unfulfilled would mean for the courts have at least been laid to rest, for now. Legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala explains that those concerns are multifaceted.
There have been invitations that are there. All the panel members have been flown in and they've been booked, so there's financial implications that are there. But another implication is this one. These are 58 or 54 candidates which are vying or going after the positions of presiding officers. What's going to happen within those vacancies within the provincial divisions? And aren't you going to find yourself in a bit of a predicament with a lot of vacancies taking place and not being yet filled? And you don't know when the matter is going to be finalized. So when are we postponing to? And it must be closer to the end of the year. So those were the concerns of the Democratic Alliance to say, we can't postpone these meetings because at the end of the day, they need to go ahead. There need to be these vacancies that must be filled.
While the JSC's work will go ahead, the MK party continues to insist that this round of JSC interviews will lead to further legal challenges for the judges that are hired. For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Nic Andersen in Johannesburg.